students, I am going to explain the basic techniques associated with orientation and mobility training. When visually impaired persons are in familiar places, they may want to travel without a cane or a sighted guide. They may use several techniques to protect themselves from hitting objects and possibly hurting themselves. These techniques are used only in areas that are already familiar. Some of the techniques are stated below. Hand trailing. To follow a parallel surface by constant contact with either hand. Hand trailing, the visually impaired person uses his or her back of the hand to follow a wall, the edge of a table or other objects. Hand trailing helps the visually impaired person to walk straight and provides him or her with tactual information. This technique is easy to use. Children often use it in school when they go from one classroom to another classroom. Technique. Step 1. The visually impaired person, he or she, stands before next to the object, wall or a table edge. He or she wants to follow. Step 2. He or she extends the arm that is closer to the object so that his or her arm is in front of and the back of the fingers are touching the object. Step 3. The fingers are slightly curved. It is important that the back of the fingers are touching the object to be trailed. The inside of the fingers should be not used because they are too tender and would hurt if the person is trying to follow a rough wall, for instance. Step 4. As the visually impaired person moves ahead, he or she should be sure not to let the arm and hand drop back too close to the body. If the arm and hand too close, the visually impaired person may not have enough time to stop when he finds an object in front of the person. Note: hand trailing is a major means of controlled indoor mobility. It enables them to walk straight and provides them with tactual information. In case where this technique is major means of travel, the instructor should provide ample practice time and various environmental experiences. This technique allows for constant tactual contact with a trailing surface and is often preferred and recommended for students who might have a balance or a wearing problem. Trailing can be done by hand or by cane. Landmarks. Landmark is a familiar, concrete, stationary, sensory object found along a route which the visually impaired person can use an orientation check. Landmarks can help a visually impaired person keep from getting lost. A landmark can be any object, sound or smell that is always in the same spot and easily found by the visually impaired person. The mango tree next to the gate is a landmark. It is always there and can easily be found. Help the visually impaired person find good landmark in the area he or she is traveling. Some examples of helpful landmarks are tactual, gate, door, milestone, clock tower, light post, a tree, and so on. Olfactory, that is a smell, a bakery, sewage, garden, and so on. Auditory, music, store, school, office, and other things. Use of a landmark in orientation and mobility. Landmark helps to understand the distance relationship. It gives clear understanding about the environment in relation with self. Landmark helps to have straight line of walking. Landmarks help to avoid confusion, time waste, and boost self-confidence of a traveler. Landmark is one of the components of orientation. Now, clues. Clue is an sensory information which guides a person or assists in solving a problem. Clues are like landmarks, but they are not permanent. The sound of children playing in the school ground is a good clue, but not a landmark, because the children are not always there. Clues can help the visually impaired persons know where they are, where they want to go, and what they may want to avoid. If they get lost, clues can help reorient them. Any sound or smell sometime work as a dominant clue which make the traveler to understand the environment and the land and take necessary precautions. Use of clue in orientation and mobility. 1. Clues are sensory information which are temporary in nature. 2. Clues help to identify the environment. 3. It helps to maintain direction. 4. It helps to locate objects in an environment. 5. Clues will help to avoid confusions and create self-confidence. Shoreline. Shoreline is the line, a edge, between two surfaces, example, between the sidewalk and or a grass strip. Sometime the visually impaired traveler may want to use the long cane to follow a grass line, a fence or a wall. This technique is called shoreline walking. The visually impaired traveler swings the cane and lightly hits the fence or a wall, but he must also swing the cane back to the other side. He or she should remember to keep the correct foot cane rhythm. Shoreline can be used to follow the side of a road and to keep from walking into the middle of the road. Correct cane techniques used with the cane tip swinging to either side of the body with every step. As the visually impaired person walks, the tip of the cane should touch the road on one side of the arc and grass on the other. He or she should feel road and grass. If he or she feels road and road twice in a row, he or she knows that is, he is walking into the road. Following a shoreline, he or she gets straight line of walking. It gives safety and self-confidence. Squaring off. For perpendicular alignment, 1. The cane traveler will place his or her backside and shoulders flush against a surface as a wall or a doorway. The cane traveler will project a straight line of walking from his or her middle line that is perpendicular from the surface used for alignment, for parallel alignment. Step 1. The cane traveler position himself or herself laterally to an object or sound. Step 2. The cane traveler will position a straight line of travel parallel to the object or sound he or she has aligned. This skill helps the visually impaired maintaining a straight line of movement and maintaining the correct direction, clockwise direction. If a visually impaired person already knows that one object is directly in front of, behind, or in the line with other object, he or she can use the direction taking technique. For example, if the visually impaired person wants to go to the bed and already knows that the bed is directly across the room from the table, he can use the table as a directional point and locate the bed easily. Step 1. The visually impaired person stands in front of the object that he or she is going to use to get his or her line of direction. He or she stands so that the object is directly behind him or her and he or she is touching the object with the back part of both legs. 2. Then if he or she walks straight ahead, will reach the object is looking for. Directions: north, east, west and south. 1. Directions are constant in nature. 2. It gives meaning to the destination. 3. It provides personal system of orientation. 4. It guides systematic means of traveling. It makes travel very easy. It helps to save time and energy. It helps to maintain straight line of walking. It boosts the confidence of the cane traveler. It clears confusion and easily identify other directions. 10. It creates better concept about an environment. The orientation and mobility training, the instructor should pay more attention in imparting the techniques. Direction taking to the visually impaired traveler. If the person knows one direction and he or she can understand the other 3 directions automatically. Right direction will lead to the right destination. Wrong direction will lead to wrong destination. Therefore, teaching direction taking technique is very important in orientation and mobility training. Sound masking. A situation in which the intensity of a sound is so loud as to block out or mask other sound sources which may be necessary for safe travel. Sense of hearing is essential as we rely on the auditory information of the world, consciously or unconsciously. The visually impaired student has to depend on this sensory training to a great extent. It overcomes the difficulties of the student suffering from lack of visual perception. Sense of hearing plays a dominant role in orientation and mobility training. The instructor should discuss the following with the student. 1. Make it very clear that what is sound masking situation. Intensity of very loud sound to mask block out other sounds sources which may be necessary for safe travel. 2. The visually impaired person always depend on auditory clues for maintaining a straight line of direction. Orientation and mobility travel demands discrimination of one sound from another and the use of a specific sound for a specific travel purpose. 3. Occasionally, when there are various simultaneous auditory clues, one sound may be so dominant that it masks out other sounds. This dominant sound might confuse the cane traveler and unable to discriminate the other sounds, which helped him to move more easily. 4. If the student considers the sound to be momentary masking, that is, a bus taking off or a siren, he or she may pause in a space in a safe position and want for the masking noise to cease. If the sound seems to be ongoing, the student should formulate an alternative plan of action. 5. He or she might solicit sighted guide assistance or choose a different route. Also, if the noise is permanent, he or she may consider using it for future reference as a landmark. The instructor should lead the student along a route with various sound masking situations. The student should make independent decisions as to the appropriate action in each case. These experiences will create better concept about the environment and increase their self-confidence. Sound shadow. The interruption of a sound pattern by an object located between the visually impaired traveler and a sound source. The visually impaired traveler should be able to understand and identify sound shadow situations. He or she should be listening a minimum of 4 typical sound shadow situations, which he or she during outdoor travel. The instructor should discuss the following with the student. 1. A sound shadow is the interruption of a sound pattern by an object located between the visually impaired traveler and a sound source. For example, a visually impaired traveler may be walking on a sidewalk using parallel traffic for alignment. A house trailer may be parked along the curb. The visually impaired traveler passes the house trailer it with act as a sound shadow between the sound source, the parallel traffic and the traveler. Thus, for the time the traveler is passing the house trailer, he or she is no longer receiving direct sounds from the parallel traffic. 2. Similar sound shadow found outdoors or created by trucks parked along the curb, bus shelters located close to the curb and trees. 3. Sound shadow can be vital clue for the visually impaired traveler. 4. The instructor should allow the student pause a variety of sound shadows and ask if or she can identify them. Initially, the instructor should be careful to make sure there are consistent sounds on either side of the sound shadow so that the person can more easily identify the shadowed sound. Echolocation. Each location refers to detecting obstacles through the noises which are generated by an individual and reflected back from the obstacles. It has been established that most congenitally visually impaired persons, visual impairment by birth, are able to detect obstacles through echolocation, whereas adventitiously visually impaired, acquired blindness persons can be trained to do so. It is thus essential that every visually impaired person should be imparted adequate and appropriate training in the proper use of the sense of hearing. It is desirable to use auditory map for orientation of the environment. Conclusion. In this, we were discussing about landmarks, clues, direction taking, sound shadows, sound masking, and echolocation. In an environment, this is all very important for the visually impaired persons to move independently.